Good day to you, everyone. I'm Gary Sutton, and I am a talk show host. I've been doing that for about 25 years, but I'm also a friend of a guy named Charlie Gerow. That's a simple statement to make, but you know what the simpler statement is? He's running for governor. Now, that might be something that's kind of interesting to all of you, because what we thought we might try to do here is in a number of conversations, we're going to talk about the things that really matter. You know, so many times we have candidates who are constructed in front of you, and in 5-minute sound bites or 1-minute sound bites or 30-second sound bites, you are told who they are. Well, we're going to find out who Charlie is through a whole lot of conversations. Yes, that thing that we used to have in our country, and we're going to have again sometime soon when Charlie becomes governor. But today we're going to have a conversation with Charlie Gerow, my friend, and first of all, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you, buddy.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you, Gary.
Well, you know, the things that really matter. Now, the easy place to start here would be, Charlie, where were you born and how did you come here and all that, and you'd be sitting here going, yawn. It's not going to be a yawn factor. We're going to learn about that through this series of conversations. But by the same token, one of the things I thought we'd start with today, Charlie, is conversation. And that's where you and I kind of first met. About 25 years ago, I had someone say to me, hey, you have to have this guy on your TV show. I had a TV show, went out to tens of homes at that time down in the New York area. But I had heard about Charlie just generally, and I knew he had run for Congress one time, and I knew he ran a little place up in Harrisburg here. But I was anxious to meet him, and so I invited him down to be a guest on my show and then to have dinner afterward. And one of the very first things I found about Charlie Gerow was, you're a master conversationalist. And you know, that's an art that's missing in our country, it seems generally today, at least when our political sphere is being talked about. How did you ever get to be such a good conversationalist?
Well, you're kind, Gary. I think the key to great conversation is the ability to listen. You know, there's that story about the guy that went to a reception one night and he left, and somebody the next day said he was the greatest conversationalist ever. And he said to his other buddy, he said, I didn't say a word. People like to know that you care. And the way that you show people that you care is you listen. And if you listen, A, you learn a lot more, and B, the conversation is strengthened by that. So doing less talking and more listening, to me, is the key to great conversation. You
know, I do a talk show every day, and one of the things that came out of that was exactly what you said, the ability to listen. But I think it's also, so many people have been asked to sit on the sidelines and watch the whole political process over the years, and being told to sit down there, we'll catch you in 2, 4, 6 years, and you can come back and vote for us again. I think it's so important for people to feel the respect that they are, in fact, the government, and people who are chosen to represent them are actually listening and representing their ideas.
Well, Gary, it really is about we the people. That's the foundational building block of our constitutional system, was that it was we the people that created the government. The government didn't create us. We aren't subject to the government, so those in the government need to be listening to the people. You know, they used to say it wasn't so much that the majority was silent, but that the government was deaf. And so I think it really begins in private conversations. It extends into political campaigns where candidates listen. And then, of course, it will roll over into those that we elect to either be executives or representatives of the people by listening to them.
You know, you talk about we the people, and we the people have conversations all the time. We're settling problems, we're doing little policies in our communities, we're working out things, we're deciding where our kids go to school, we're chatting about all kinds of things. It seems in the last couple of years especially, and maybe even longer than that with politics, that we the people stop talking to each other. We're just coming out of the holidays. A lot of people won't talk about politics at the dinner table, be it Christmas or New Year's. A lot of people can't talk about COVID. We're deciding if we're going to card people coming into our homes, and all those kind of things have come up. We have a difficult time with that. But in so many other levels, we can converse with each other. But on those, we seem to be talking to each other. How do we get to a point where we're doing some of that kind of divisive action right now that really doesn't speak well to conversation?
Well, it's got to be talking with each other
right,
rather than at each other. And things have become very divisive. I don't know whether it's social media or what factors are leading to that, but things are today a lot more edgy than they were just 15 or 20 years ago. But I think that you've hit on a lot here, Gary, in terms of how we talk with each other, how we listen to each other, and how we engage other people. Because so often I hear from folks, my vote, my voice don't really matter. And that's a terrible thought. It really is. It kind of drives me crazy because I want people to really believe that their voice and their vote and what they have to say and what they think really matters. And I think the way that that happens is by people that are running for office or holding office listen and let people know that they want to hear what they have to say.
And I think that's what we're talking about here, that it's so easy to construct a candidate anymore, be they running for the state, the borough, a governor, a president, whatever it might be. We construct these candidates and we put out these little manufactured things, and then it turns out they're not really who we thought they would be. And I think we want to have the conversation with them much as we would if you and I were stepping out in the front lawn and picking up the paper that morning and chatting about whatever. I think that's where we want to try to get back to in our political landscape, but the unsocial media, I'll call it, has really gotten to a point where it's a hit and run.
Yeah.
We gain this false confidence. We can say anything we want to anyone, fire at them, and hide behind the shadows. And that's not something that is conducive to good conversation. And it's also not something conducive to what we talked about in the beginning, respect and listening to what someone truly has to say without hating them. You know, that's the other part. We seem to want to hate people now because they have a different point of view. When did that get started?
Yeah, that's a tough thing, too. I mean, our politics have always been kind of rough and tumble, Gary. But it's important to me to really focus on people, on individuals, on what they have to say, and to really not be phony with them, not be contrived, not be, as you say, packaged and manufactured. I mean, a lot of candidates come out and they read off of a piece of paper what other people have written for them to read. You know, I don't do that. I come out and I talk without notes, generally speaking. Sometimes that's not the greatest thing in the world, but people get a sense of who you really are. And I hope that they get a sense that I really care, because that's at the core. If you care, then people will understand that they need to be involved in a conversation with you. If they get the sense that you don't really care, then why do they want to waste their breath? And the other part of the question that you asked was, where do we get to the point where we just hate each other? And that's really tough. I mean, our conversations about so many things,
right,
even sports, have become very uncivil. So I think getting back to just politeness, good manners, and basic civility is really something that everybody wants, regardless of your point of view on any issue.
By the way, I'll give you a secret. If you ever want to get into a great conversation with Charlie Gerow, get into sports, especially if it involves Villanova or Notre Dame or anything. The guy has a memory like a steel trap, and that's one of the things you and I have talked about many times. But, you know, you were talking about people really need to know that you care. Right. And one of the very first times I found out about how much Charlie Gerow cared about conversing with people, we were sitting in a restaurant up here in Harrisburg, outside. It was a beautiful day. And I had come up just to have lunch with him, and we sat out there. And there must have been 30 people that walked by during that day at lunch. And in every single case, bar two, Charlie knew not only about the person, but about some situation with them, a family member, a business, something they were doing, a round of golf they'd have, whatever it might have been. But he was able to converse with them, and they liked that. And the fact that he liked talking with them said volumes to me as I watched that day. And when we got done, when I got done being amazed, watching all that as people were going by, and it just was part of what you did, like breathing. I said, how do you do that? And you told me a story about what you did for an entire year to learn how to listen to people, get to know them. And I want you to relate that story a little bit, because I think people really need to know it.
Well, there was a time early in my career when I could do this kind of thing, Gary, that I made a New Year's resolution. I'm not much for New Year's resolutions, but I made a New Year's resolution that I would have dinner with a different person every single day, and that the people I would have dinner with were folks I didn't already know. And so over the course of the year, I got a chance to meet, have dinner with, and that's a great place to have a conversation.
Right.
Over food always works. I got a chance to know almost 400 people that I didn't know before, and got to know their stories and hear what they had to say and learn a little bit about that. And it was a fascinating thing. I wish I could still do it. Now, I got to tell you, it drives my kids crazy, because we'll go to a restaurant and they'll always say, blinders, Dad, blinders. You know?
Right.
There's too many people out there that you want to talk to, but talk to us, and I try to do that too.
But you know, we're in the political world, people want to know that the people that are representing them want to hear them, want to talk with them, not to them, want to be able to relate to them. And I think that's one of the things, the ability to converse, the ability to listen, the ability to respect. We've talked about that. It is really important right now, and we're missing that, I think, in the present day, not only in in our country, but here in Pennsylvania. And that's an important thing that people want to know, especially coming out of this COVID time where many felt that they weren't listened to very well and they weren't a part of that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, to be very blunt, Tom Wolf did a terrible job. He not only didn't listen to the people of Pennsylvania, he didn't listen to the legislature, he didn't listen to anybody that didn't agree with exactly what he wanted to do. And when that happens, you get terrible results. And I think that the way the pandemic was handled in Pennsylvania was truly terrible. You had arbitrary and capricious lockdowns, mandates, orders, edicts, and then it went to vindictive and punitive actions after that. And that is kind of the natural flow of things when you don't listen. And so our campaign, Gary, has been all about, you put these campaigns together and you think, what's the core? What's the central message? What's the defining theme? And we said ours is from the people, which means listening to people.
Right.
Hearing what they have to say, reflecting their views rather than simply projecting your own ideas onto them. From the people, for the people. Because I think when you listen, you're going to have an opportunity to really understand what people need, what they want, what matters to them, what really matters when they sit down at their breakfast table. And then you can reflect those not only in your campaign, but in the way you govern.
Now, that's quite a gauntlet to throw down, because as you're watching this today, you notice he didn't say from the Republicans or from the Democrats or from the liberals or from the conservatives, from the right or from the left. It's from all the people. And that means that you have to practice what you preach in terms of respecting when people are going to come with you and say, by the way, what about this? But I think the point before we get to our final one here is that even in talking about Tom Wolf a moment ago, Tom Wolf's a good and decent man. You were talking about actions. And that's something we have to get back to, is talking about the actions of someone. What are we going to do to try to make it better for all people? But in the same time, in that conversation we've been talking about today, making sure that we're not tearing people down, that we can come back and talk again. I'm so reminded of Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan. And you can tell that story about the end of the day, those two would get together every now and then.
My old boss, Ronald Reagan, and Tip O'Neill, his political nemesis, used to say it was pistols at dawn and cigars at dusk, because they enjoyed that kind of relationship. And I've been blessed, Gary. As you know, I've broken lances on television for many years with Democrats and liberals and extreme progressives on the other side. But I've always tried to do it with a smile on my face. You know, they call me the conservative happy warrior. And I love that title. A lot of titles I get I don't love so much, but I love that one because I think we can be civil and decent. Tony May, God rest his soul, who was my on-air nemesis and sparring partner for many, many years. And I went up to the University of Scranton some years ago to speak to a group of college students. And we broke lances. We really went at it. I don't even remember what the subject was, but it was bang, bang. And afterwards we went to dinner. And the students were just amazed that two guys that had been so viciously and violently opposed to each other on stage over ideas, not personalities, could be so nice to each other once they were having dinner. And Tony leaned over to me and he said, they sure as heck would be surprised if they knew we drove up here together tonight, wouldn't they? So I think that that's really the core of what we have to be.
I think there is a respect that we come back to, and receptivity. In other words, one of the things that's always impressed me about you has been the fact that you've always come in and you want to know. You want to hear from people. You want to hear what the other person has to say. And you're not afraid to hold your ground and say, and by the way, here's what I think. Now, touche, right back at you. Those are what really make good debates. Those are what make great conversation. And I think when you are welcoming to someone, when you respect them, when you say, hey, guess what? This won't be the last conversation we have. It might happen again tomorrow, but it's going to be with the same respect, albeit it might also be with a passionate belief in something else. That's a pretty good place to be.
It is a good place to be, Gary, and I hold my beliefs very strongly. I try to be a man of principle, but by the same token, it's not covered with personal attacks. It's based upon the ideas and, battling out those ideas. I mean, nobody has a monopoly on the truth. Nobody has a monopoly on great ideas. So taking some foundational principles, which is where I operate from, and then surrounding those principles with other people's good ideas, I think leads to the best solutions for the problems that face us.
I think the idea of saying, and I had a lady on my talk show one time who said, you're very one-sided about this. I said, you're very right. I said, I am, but I'm also willing to listen to your side. You may have a better idea than I do, and I'm willing to listen and see if maybe I would change on that. I think the idea here is that we want representatives here in the governor's seat in Pennsylvania who are willing to hear good ideas no matter where they come from, and that they know that you're listening and at least saying, I'm going to consider that. Maybe you have something better here. Maybe we can come to some combination of great ideas, because in the end, it's not about who wins and loses. That's for an election. It's about who wins and wins. That's called good policy.
Yeah, I mean, Gary, you hit the nail on the head. Pardon me. It's always got to be about win-win, because when it's win-win, it's we, the people, who win. And bringing together a lot of good ideas and being able to listen to folks, to bring in people that are better at what they do than you are, something I've really tried hard to do through my life, me, an administration that really works for the people.
Charlie, it's been great talking to you and with you, more importantly, in this conversation. But you know what? You're kind of putting your money where your mouth is here, so to speak. And when people try to get to the representatives many times, you go through a whole protective wall of people before you ever get there, if you get there. You're kind of taking that wall down right now. And if people want to have a conversation with you, it's going to be pretty easy. Tell them about it.
Well, it's interesting because I hate the gatekeepers where you got to jump through 85 hoops to talk to somebody that you elected, somebody that theoretically anyway works for you. So what I've done from day one on the campaign trail, to the great chagrin of some of my friends and associates, is I've put my personal cell phone number out for anybody to call me. It's 717-877-8194, 717-877-8194. And yeah, I pick it up and answer it personally. A couple of people have been very surprised. Oh, wait a minute, this is really you, Charlie. And yeah, it really is. So if folks want to talk to me, I think they ought to be able to without going through layers and layers of bureaucracy to get to me. That's how you learn, by listening. And I think the people of Pennsylvania have some great ideas, Gary, some of which haven't been explored. And so I'm delighted, I really am, to listen to folks.
No matter where you live, no matter who you are, no matter what persuasion you are. And the only thing we ask for is respect, right? And having a conversation with someone. So many times you hear today in our country, someone will say, you want to have that conversation? Let's have that conversation. That's usually code speak for let's not have a conversation at all. Charlie Gerow just said he wants to have a conversation with you, and you'll talk directly to him. 717-877-8194. These are the things that really matter. And we start with conversation today. Next time, we'll get together with some more of the things that really matter to you right here in Pennsylvania. For Charlie Gerow, I'm Gary Sutton.
Businessman, conservative, patriot, Charlie Gerow for governor.